In the late 1500s, England was a small, rain-soaked island on the edge of Europe, overshadowed by the mighty empires of Spain and Portugal. Yet within a few centuries, it would become the largest empire in history, ruling over a quarter of the world's land and people. The story begins not with grand strategy, but with pirates, adventurers, and merchants chasing profit and glory. Queen Elizabeth I, facing Catholic Spain as England's greatest enemy, turned to men like Francis Drake and John Hawkins, granting them licenses to attack Spanish ships and settlements. These privateers were pirates with a royal blessing, raiding Spanish treasure fleets, stealing gold and silver, and disrupting Spain's grip on the New World. Drake's 1573 raid on the Spanish silver train in Panama netted a fortune and made him a hero in England, a villain in Spain. Elizabeth's privateers didn't just rob ships, they also scouted new lands for English. Walter Raleigh's failed attempt to establish a colony at Roanoke in 1585 showed the risks, but the lure of riches and adventure was irresistible. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 gave England naval confidence and signaled that the seas were open for English expansion. In 1607, the Virginia Company landed settlers on Jamestown Island, establishing the first permanent English colony in North America. The site was chosen to avoid Spanish attack, but the settlers faced immediate threats from local Powhatan tribes and from disease, starvation, and internal conflict. Captain John Smith's strict discipline and ability to trade with the Powhatan kept the colony alive, but after his departure, the starving time winter of 1609 to 1610 killed most settlers. Only 60 of 300 survived. John Rolfe's introduction of tobacco as a cash crop in 1612 transformed Jamestown's fortunes, making it profitable and attracting more settlers. However, relations with Native Americans remained tense and often violent. In 1622, a surprise attack killed a third of the colonists, leading to the king dissolving the Virginia Company and making Virginia a royal colony. English expansion quickly moved to the Caribbean, where the climate was ideal for sugar and tobacco plantations. In 1655, English forces seized Jamaica from Spain, establishing a lucrative colony worked by enslaved Africans. English privateers and pirates continued to raid Spanish and French ships, feeding the growing demand for sugar, tobacco, and slaves. The British established their first permanent African settlement at James Island in the Gambia River in 1661, using it as a base for the transatlantic slave trade. The triangular trade became central. British ships carried goods to Africa, traded for slaves, transported them to the Americas, and returned with sugar, tobacco, and other products. In 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter to the East India Company, giving it a monopoly on English trade with Asia. The company started as a group of London merchants seeking spices, silk, and tea, but soon established trading posts called factories along the coasts of India and Southeast Asia. Company's agents negotiated with local rulers and grew rich trading Indian textiles and Chinese porcelain for British wool and silver. By the mid-1700s, the East India Company had evolved from a trading firm into a military and political power, hiring its own armies and seizing control of Bengal after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. The Mughal emperor granted the company the right to collect taxes in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, providing the resources to expand its private army and extend British influence across India. The British government passed the Navigation Acts in 1651 and later years, requiring that all colonial exports be shipped on English ships and all imports come via England. This created a closed economic system, ensuring that wealth from the colonies flowed back to Britain and fueling the growth of British industry and commerce. Most early British colonies were not planned by the Crown but by private companies and wealthy individuals seeking profit. The Virginia Company, the East India Company, and others received royal charters but operated independently, raising money from investors and running their own affairs. The Crown exercised some oversight but was often the least enthusiastic partner in empire building. Long before the Americas, England practiced colonization in Ireland. The Munster plantations of the late 1500s saw English and Welsh Protestants settle on confiscated Irish land, setting a precedent for later colonial ventures. Many of those involved in Ireland would later help establish colonies in North America. Expansion was driven by fierce competition with other European powers, especially Spain, Portugal, France, and the Netherlands. Wars in Europe spilled over into the colonies, with each side seeking to seize the other's territories and trade routes. The British Navy grew in strength, protecting trade and enforcing British claims around the world. The early British Empire was not the result of a grand plan, but of piecemeal acquisition, piracy, privateering, trading, settlement, and conquest. Colonies were founded for profit, religious freedom, or strategic advantage. Some, like Jamestown, barely survived. Others, like the Caribbean sugar islands, became enormously profitable. By the late 1600s, Britain had established colonies in North America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, laying the foundations for the global empire that would dominate the 18th and 19th centuries.